Hello, artists! Today we're going to talk about expressive features of art and design. And I bet there's a good chance you've heard of expressive features of art and design before, but you maybe have heard of it under a different name, that being elements and principles of design. Sound familiar yet? You've probably been learning about these things since like elementary school, but we're going to take it to the next level by really talking about what the difference is between the elements and the principles and how you use them and how that can really impact your art piece. So let's see what we got. What are they though? What are the elements and principles of art? This kind of feels like, when you're a little kid and you watch TV shows and the TV show talks to you and it goes like the little character's like, where's my backpack? And then you're like, the backpack's over there. And so that's what I imagine this is like. I'm posing questions, I pause, and you shout at my screen, I know what the elements and principles are. Yeah, I know you're probably not going to actually shout at it, but at least think in your head. At least try to answer some of these, all right? Work with me here. So, the elements, talk about first. The elements start with T, L, V, S, S, F, C. Can you think of what any of those are? Well, they are texture, line, value, space, shape, form, and color. Starting to ring a bell? The elements are the features that you use to create your piece of art. So if you're going to create art, you're going to be using these things. There's going to be texture, line, value, space, shape, form, color. Maybe you don't always use all of them, but at least be thinking about them as you create. So one way to think about what the elements are and versus the principles, which we'll go get onto later, the elements, imagine you're making a pizza and the elements would be the pizza toppings. So these are all the things you're going to put on there. What do you guys like putting on your pizza? I am a pepperoni and pineapple fan. I love pepperoni and pineapple. That's my favorite. If you don't like pineapple on your pizza, you are just a closed-minded hater. All right, let's move on. So I've got a bunch of slides that are going to go through each of the elements. And as I pull them up, I want you to think about what element is primarily being used here. Obviously, they're all going to be using more than one, but what do you think primarily is being used here? You got it, line. So, in this piece, we have all these like curvy lines that come together and pull apart to kind of feel almost like fabric. Over here we have lines that are creating value. So you see as the lines are closer together, it kind of looks darker in comparison to where the lines are further apart. It appears later. And then over here, these are drawn all with lines, these hands. There's no values, it's just outlines. And in fact, it's all one line. The whole thing is connected. Well, each hand. Actually, before we get on to the next one, I want to talk a little bit more about these types of lines. So I've got a source here from the Getty Museum. The Getty Museum is super cool. If you ever go to LA, it's a free museum and you get to ride a gondola to go up to it. It's awesome. Obviously not right now because of coronavirus, but anyway. Let's talk about these different types of lines. So in these sort of art history examples, we have horizontal lines, and horizontal lines kind of give more suggestion of a feeling of like rest. Things are at peace when there's a lot of horizontal lines. So here we have like these calm horizontal lines in the water, on the land and such in this lovely painting from 1770. All right. Now here in this one with vertical lines, the vertical lines often communicate a sense of height. So when you want to make things feel taller, you want to use a lot of vertical lines. And you might even consider that in the format of your piece. Like this one's a landscape format. This one probably is actually a portrait format. It's just been cropped weird for the website, but portrait format gives more of a sense of height. It gives like an upward motion into into your piece. We'll skip that next one because it doesn't really apply to what we're doing. Diagonal lines kind of give a feeling of movement and probably sometimes chaos, depending on, how jagged and such they are. In this one here, we got some pretty jagged lines. We get this storm feeling going on, and you can see that this feels a lot less calm than this one up here. Even just the colors, like beyond the colors, I mean, if you just look at the lines, a lot less calm feeling in this piece than this piece. And they're created around the same time. A calm at the Mediterranean port and a storm on the Mediterranean coast. Same artist. All right, and now this one, last one here. A curve can create energy. So softer curves, like it gives the piece energy, but it feels calmer than if you have like zigzag and jagged lines, all right? So it's important to think about the types of lines that you're creating in your piece. All right, back to our slides. So which element do you think is primarily being used here? Yes, color. So we got some pop art here and, pop of color over here, just mostly black and white, but we have the color. How about this one? Texture. So with this, now texture is a feeling that you would have when you touch something. So if you think about how your clothes feel versus like a wooden table, I'm literally just looking at my own surroundings right now, but how do you convey that feeling of texture in an art piece? Now, Van Gogh over here was really well known for using art that, like a style of painting that was very chunky. He painted with a palette knife, and there's always like a lot of texture feeling. Like, you imagine if you could reach out and touch that painting, it would not feel flat. It would feel bumpy and coarse. And we kind of get that feeling over here as well, kind of bit of texture, but also, I mean, even the background on this one has a smooth texture. So how do you create these different feelings? Over here we get a bit of, texture and like the repetition of these lines in the plants. Oh yeah, there we go, texture. How about here? Here we have value. Now, value is going to be one of the most important things we talk about in Drawing and Painting 1. Value is really what takes your piece to the next level. It helps it to feel more realistic when you have a good concept of value. And something you might hear me saying, or maybe I'll just be writing this to you as this class goes, is you don't want to be scared of the dark. You can usually always go darker in your value. A lot of beginner artists tend to want to stick pretty light in their values, but dark is good. And when I say value, we're talking about a range of light to dark. So on this piece over here on the right, we've got this dark blue value here in the front, and then it ranges to these lighter blues that are further away. And that helps create depth here. So the darker, more pigmented ones are closer to the viewer, and it gets lighter as it gets further away from you. Value over here helps us to feel more three-dimensional, as well as this fabric over here. Using all these range of value is what helps us to feel like fabric and not just something flat. What do I hear? Shape. So when we're talking about shape, we're usually referring to things that are two-dimensional, things that look flat. Obviously, with drawing and painting, we're going to have anything that's literally flat, but we're talking about just also looking flat does not look like it could be 3D. Versus form looks like it could be three-dimensional. So with this painting or drawing over here on the right, we can see that these lines create this sense of depth to make it feel like if you were to walk in here, this would be a three-dimensional hallway. Or this painting, yes, this is a painting, not a photograph, really creates a sense of three-dimensionality in this piece. And also this portrait over here, like you can tell because these shadows that this person is not just flat, that they have depth to them. Do you guys like this painting, or do you think it's weird? Do you think it's creepy? I kind of like it, but then if I look at this eye too long, I get a little creeped out. Or maybe this eye? Alright, well, teach their own. Space. So, when we're talking about space, I think it's a little bit trickier at times. So it's good to add a couple other vocabulary words with this to really understand space. Those are negative space and positive space. So take a look at this drawing here. What do you think is the positive space and what do you think is the negative space? Yeah, so the negative space is where these hands are. The purposeful empty space in a design. So the artist has purposely left this blank. Positive space is where there actually is, drawing or painting. So that's the positive space within the piece. How about over here on this print? Yeah, the negative space is the background. I know it's not just white and it is filled in, but it is negative space in comparison to this positive space that is the wave, because the wave is really the main subject matter. Background is just negative space. All right, so this brings us to the principles. Now the principles are a little bit trickier to think about than the elements. They start with V, C, B, U, M, P, E, R. Any thoughts as to what any of those are? The principles are variety, contrast, which will be a big one for us, balance, unity, movement, pattern, emphasis, and rhythm. So, the principles are the way in which you use the elements in your art piece. So we come back to our pizza analogy. The principles would be like the way that you arrange all the toppings on the pizza. So remember, the elements are the toppings. The way you arrange them on the pizza would be the principles. So, I know, not the best analogy. Everybody always kind of rolls their eyes at me when I do this one in class, but if you were to take like the pepperonis and put them all in a circle, you'd be doing some specific arrangements, or these olives and put them all in lines across the pizza. The way you arrange it would be the principle of it. Yeah? Making you hungry yet? Okay, so let's talk about these principles. First one is variety. It's always good to have a variety of things going on in your piece. You don't want too many, but like a good variety. So here in this landscape painting, of a variety of colors going on. And there's also some not so realistic colors, which is kind of cool, but they all kind of stick in the same color family, but there is a variety of them, not just too much the same. Did not put my phone on silent before this. All right, there we go. I filmed one of these yesterday for jewelry, and the cat came and joined at that time. So you guys just get my Instagram notifications. All right. Variety. There could also be a variety of textures. What we're seeing over here in this piece. There's like a feeling of texture with the hair in comparison to the flowers. Feels a little bit different. There's more lines going on versus in her face. We have these the freckles, which also creates a different texture. And there's different textures going on in this painting as well. So you can have a variety of literally any of the elements. You could have a variety of value. You could have a variety of shapes, of form, any of them. They all work. And you want some of that in your piece. All right, similar to variety, and that you can use it with anything, is contrast. And so when you're creating a good piece, you want to have dynamic contrast going on within your piece. So on this first one here, there's contrast of colors and values. So by just coloring in the skin and some of the shadows, the artist has created contrast from the human to their clothes, and this really emphasizes the person in the piece. So that contrast is like pretty meaningful to the piece of art. Over here we have a contrast between the mountains and the sky. What is contrasting here? Well, there's quite a few different things. So the sky has this treatment of circles, so we have contrasting shapes because that has circles and the mountains have lines. But we're also seeing some contrast in texture because the circles create a different texture than the lines do. And then also, the sizes of the circles change, so when they get a lot smaller, the texture feels different. It's similar over with the lines. When the lines get closer together, it has a different feeling than when the lines get further apart. It also contrasts value, because as the lines are further apart, they appear lighter than when the lines are closer together. So you can have a contrast of any of the elements again. It could be a contrast of space, could be a contrast of value, any of them. All right, so balance. Now, balance a lot of times has to do with symmetry, and also just like a visual weight, which is something you kind of get an inherent feel for as you continue to look at more and more art. So this piece up here has a symmetrical balance to it. If you were to split it through here, it'd be almost exactly the same from side to side. And so in that case, it feels balanced because it's the same in both places pretty much. You never want it exactly the same. That's not good to do in art. So what works better is asymmetrical balance. Over here, this piece, rather than putting the tree right in the center, the artist has balanced all the texture of the tree with this negative space over here. So using positive versus negative space and in the balance is really important. If you look in the negative space, you see almost the same shape that is the tree. And it creates like a good visual weight. Like this holds most of the painting, and there's some positive space down here, and then we get a good amount of negative space to balance it out. Neither is overpowering. This piece, however, this one has too much negative space. And this just feels really unbalanced because, like, why do we want all this extra gray space above the lion's head? Like, what is that doing for anyone? Nothing. We want more lion and less gray. So just crop it out, take it away, or move the lion up would work better. All right, unity. So while you do want a variety of things going on in your painting, you also want some unity. Like, you don't want too much variety in that things don't feel like they go together and belong in the same piece. So in these examples, we're seeing a lot of unity within style. So this one has kind of similar shapes repeated, and they're all created in the same style by ripping watercolor paper to get this nice like white edges on there. So they probably painted paper first, ripped them up, and then collaged it together so we get some repetition in those shapes. There's also some repetition in color in there as well, and just the style that they used watercolor throughout the whole thing. And then over in the second one, we're seeing unity in the line style. So not all the lines are the exact same width, but they're pretty similar in how thick they are, and they're all kind of like curvy lines, and they taper at the end, so that the line treatment is similar. And then also just that there's a limited color palette. We've only got the teal and the yellow and the black and the white, and it just keeps it unified in that way. All right, movement. So when I'm teaching about movement, most people usually think movement means like that something's literally moving, or it's a drawing of someone that's moving, like running or biking or something. Actually, movement usually is based on what your eye is doing as you look at a piece. So you are the viewer right now looking at these two pieces of art, and as the viewer, what your eye is doing is the movement. So, as an artist, you want to tell the viewer where their eye should be moving. And a good painting or a good drawing is very clear on where the viewer should be looking. So, I know these both are both a little bit kind of weird, but I like it. Over here, I tend to look at her eye first. Maybe you look somewhere else first, but if I look at her eye first, I then kind of follow this path through the rest of her face, and this line here kind of back up, and then I follow this line, and then I notice, oh, there's this other eye happening over here. And so it's this visual movement that's happening to go throughout the whole piece and look at every detail. Kind of the same thing over here. If I start here at her eyes, it draws me up to the bird, or if I start at the bird, these lines draw me back to her eyes and back around. It kind of has this circular motion going on. So that's movement. It's showing the eyes where to look. Pattern. You guys have been learning about patterns since like elementary school, so I decided to step it up a little bit and show you some ways to use pattern that aren't exactly like exact patterns. We probably learned about patterns is like you have to repeat things exactly, like triangle, circle, triangle, circle, triangle, circle. But really, pattern is just any sort of repetition that happens. So we have this repeated line, like little lines happening over here with these, or a lot of repetition in the beaks, and just the swans over and over again creates repetition. Where's the repetition in this middle picture? Yeah, we're seeing it on the ground with the brick pattern. And then also it creates a bit of pattern here on the vending machine too. We get some pattern going on. Maybe even up here on the gutter. So this kind of use of pattern is kind of drawing the eye around the page a little bit as well. Over on this landscape one, we have repetition in the trees, and therefore that's our pattern. Emphasis. So when we're talking about emphasis in art, we're talking about what is the focal point? Like what's the most important thing in your piece that you want the viewer to look at? What do you want to do to catch their eye? So on this first illustration, the focal point is probably these flowers up here. And so the artist is using color to make sure we look at these important parts. So if we start here and we look at this focal point, because there's just color in the flowers and the heart, it kind of draws our eye down here to look at these things. So that's how they're emphasizing using color. On the seascape over here, we're also using color for emphasis. This is where the eye is drawn to, and there's like this glowy color around it that draws us in. All these lines are drawing us into the center here, and these circular patterns. So, yeah. Okay, unrelated right now. You see these birds? See how they're flying away? They're not just a V. Like they're shaped-ish like a V, but they still have a body. So I don't want to see any V birds in this class. I want you to actually draw the bird. Look at that. You can do that. No reason you can't do that. All right, moving on. Okay, rhythm. Rhythm's a little bit trickier. I think one of the more difficult ones, especially because it seems so similar to pattern. The way that I would describe rhythm and pattern being different is that rhythm is a little bit more about a feeling you get from it, versus pattern is a little bit more exact. So I'm going to read you what I wrote here. Rhythm, to me, feels like the combination of movement, texture, and pattern. When you look at a piece with rhythm, you can feel the path it's on. I've got rhythm, I've got my art, I've got rhythm. Okay, sorry. I like to say sometimes. Anyway, we get kind of feeling. Is it rigid? Is it flowy? What's the rhythm of the piece? So here we get a rhythm happening from the flowers in this landscape, kind of drawing us around here. Bit of a flowy rhythm. This one feels a little bit more choppy in the way that it's painted. And this one feels a little bit chaotic because there's so many lines happening. I have to tell you guys, I just included this piece because I feel like this is probably what we've all been doing for the last week, not being able to go anywhere, just sitting on the couch eating bags of chips. Just me? Okay, I didn't think so. Alright. Well, there you have it, guys. Those are the expressive features of art and design, also known as the elements and principles. And I have for you a little set of mnemonic devices that might also help you remember what they are. So for the elements, there is, well, you can use any T name here. I have the name Tara. Tara loves science fiction comics. Tara loves science fiction comics. That's how you can remember what all the elements are. And to remember the principles, it's actually a little bit easier. Very cool bumper. Very cool bumper. So hopefully that helps you to remember what they all are. The end! Thanks for listening. Good stuff. I hope you all enjoyed. Hope you all learned some more stuff about elements principles now. Now you can go subscribe to my YouTube channel. You know, there's so much great stuff. It's just all going to be screencasts for this class and lovely stuff like that. All right. Now head back to the instructions and see what you got to do.